Godfrey, great to meet you. Officially. We've emailed back and forth a little bit, but yeah, super excited to have you on our creative conversations today. And we're going to be talking about your involvement with the community. And you are the Director of Resource Development at ArtsKC.
Yes, that's correct. That's my full-time gig.
Yep. And then you also are an entrepreneur, and you've launched a nonprofit called Civic Saint, or is it?
Oh, good. This is an excellent question.
Perfect.
So yeah, we are technically formulated as an LLC in the state of Missouri, but we are what's really termed as a social enterprise, and that's you can go as far as being a B Corp certified, but what it basically means is that giving back to the community and bettering the world is a core part of your business model. And you really can view it as the next wave of development for nonprofits, because it does allow you to earn revenue and therefore become less dependent on contributed gifts, so donations from foundations, corporations, and individuals for those who don't work in the sector. But for me, for Civic Saint, our core purpose is to create products that bring joy, nostalgia, and reflection to people's daily lives. I'm currently wearing one of our products. It's our I Am Human matte gold crew neck, and it's super soft and warm and perfect for a day like this. But all of our designs that we launched with are really focused on creating an affirmative world where people feel included and celebrated. So I really tried to pick phrases that were unifying. So if you go to civicsaint.com, you can see that I've got 7 variants of lapel pins in 3 different colors. And they're all phrases like human, justice, hashtag BLM, things that really connect to the movements for Black Lives Matter, voter rights, and equity in America.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Super important topic and very timely right now. So awesome.
Yeah, sadly.
I know. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So let's go back and let's talk about your life before you started Civic Saint and before you started ArtsKC. Before all that, what is your creative and or professional background? Like, did you go to college? Did you get a degree? Anything like that?
Yeah, it started long ago. I've always loved the arts. I'd really say it's an inherited passion for creativity, because I remember as a child my mom teaching me how to sketch. And I loved cars growing up. I wanted to grow up to design cars, but I grew up in Olathe, Kansas, which is a suburb of Kansas City, Missouri, of course. And it just seemed like too far off of an idea. I also wanted to become a fashion designer. I didn't know what that was. I knew I liked clothing and I loved making paper clothes for my stuffed animals. But again, no clue how to do that. So I always loved creativity, and I've only recently become comfortable owning the fact that I am a creative individual and human. And even there's still some trepidation in saying that, because working at the Arts Council, I do instantly compare myself to phenomenal artists in our community like Ada Koch and Katrina Ravenon, Ryan Wilkes, who just do otherworldly things that I only dream of doing. But in saying that, creativity comes in many forms, and there's value in whatever you choose to put out into the world if it comes from a place of meaning. And if you're able to connect with someone through that, that's art. So I would say I'm making more commercial art, which has always been an interest and passion of mine, something I've been a little bit ashamed of, because I've always thought of gallery art as being the goal, of course. But there's value in commercial art too, and there's a place for it in the world. And for me, it's fun to think about making something that has the most, that has meaning to the most people possible, because I do believe art is transformative and creativity is fundamental. But all that to say, I've loved art since I was little. Yeah, I used to build Lego homes, and like I said, make clothes for my stuffed animals. I used to love to draw. In high school, I was deeply involved in our theater community. So I did musical theater, a lot of comedic theater, which I really loved. And then I did Shakespeare in the Park, which was phenomenal. It was Camp Shakespeare, so the youth variant, and it was over the summer for a period of weeks, and it culminated in you producing a parody of the main stage show. Yeah. Ours that year, I believe, was Henry VIII. So I'll never forget, the parody was awesome, and working with all the other students was awesome. But we performed right before the main stage show one evening, and Nathan Darrow was there. And he is like our claim to fame from the actor community in Kansas City. He was on House of Cards, Edward Meacham, that character. And I will always remember that he came up afterward and said, "You have really nice comedic timing." And I was floored, because I'm like this 17-year-old kid who's just doing this for fun, maybe thinking about it as a career, but, you know, lacks the confidence to truly pursue it, lacks the know-how to even like go after it if I did want to make it a career. And to be acknowledged in that way was super meaningful to me, even almost 15 years later. And I share that story because it connects with why I love the arts. I feel that art is a way for you to discover your self-worth, to discover your voice, and to discover your talents. At least that's what it's been for me. And that's why I choose to create, and how I like to try to use my creative talents is to affirm others and to help bring visibility to their stories. So after high school, I did go to KU and I studied architecture with a minor in Russian language, which was a formative experience for me, because I got to really be involved in an international global community, because we had so many students from across the world, from across the country. And then I also got to volunteer quite a bit and discover my passion for public service. So that then led to me doing AmeriCorps VISTA at the city of Phoenix, Arizona, for a year after I graduated undergrad. And it was, again, a crucible experience, but I got to work on volunteer programs within the city, and help out with community service programs for underserved residents. But I wrote a grant when I was there and stumbled into that as a profession. I thought, wow, this is really cool. Like, you get to have ideas and then put them on paper and meet with people to collaborate. And then someone gives you money to do it. And then you get to build the thing. Awesome. Yeah, I love making things. That's like, throughout my entire career, that's the one consistent aspect. Everywhere I go, I always like to build something. And I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur ever since I was like 8 or 10 years old. I thought I want to own a business. But yeah, so all of that came to a head and guided me toward earning a master's in public administration, again from KU. And I came back because it was an excellent program and still is, and it was affordable, which is great because I paid for college myself, like many of us do. Mm-hmm. But through that, I had a number of other volunteer experiences, ultimately interned at ArtsKC Regional Arts Council, and then was lucky enough to earn a job there. So that is a very long answer to your question to cover the last like decade and a half of my life.
That is awesome. Just curious, personally curious, I know when I went to K-State, and I know that their architecture program was very rigorous. How did you like the structure of architecture degree?
I loved it. And I will say, to clarify, I got the BA, not the MA.
Gotcha.
I always want to clarify that. The BA is the 4-year program where it's more appreciation based, and there are some lower level studio courses. But ultimately, if you want to become a licensed architect, you would have to get into the 5-year program, which is accelerated. I applied and didn't get in, and it was a blessing in disguise. And or you can go to post-grad to do urban planning or architecture.
Okay.
But I loved it. I think because I got the architectural components where I was able to learn about the history of the built world and understand how to structurally formulate a successful community. That was really meaningful to me, and it really skewed me more toward urban planning ultimately, which then bled into public service, which of course led to nonprofits.
Yeah.
And it was great because I noticed the students in the 5-year program, because it's accelerated, because it's an intensive area of study, they weren't necessarily allowed much room for freedom or exploration outside of the field beyond their, the required 2 years of an English class or whatever, or a Spanish class. But for me, I was able to explore. I took theater courses, I took dance classes, I took a blacksmithing class that did count toward my architecture components too. That was awesome. I took a fitness class. I've never been so sore in my life. But yeah, I love that there was a framework, but my counselors really allowed me to fill it in as I saw fit, and allowed me to really satiate my curiosity.
That's awesome that you got to explore. That's really cool. And blacksmithing, wow. That was the one. Well, one of the classes that I was just too afraid to take in college.
Oh, sweet. I mean, I'm glad it was offered and you considered it. Did you ever do any other work or?
I did jewelry making a little bit. I took a 3D jewelry design class where we 3D printed and then cast it in metal. So it wasn't really like blacksmithing, but we got to work with metal and, jewelry. So.
I mean, that's dope. I would love to take a jewelry making class next. I've always loved earrings and rings growing up. So, I mean, and obviously I wear them now. Shout out to Whiskey and Bone.
Yeah, but that was a good experience. But yeah, I think blacksmithing, now looking back, I wish I would have done it, but.
Yeah, I mean, you're alive, so it's never too late.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true. So anyway, enough about me. You were mentioning after your degrees, you got an internship with ArtsKC, and then you got your job there. That was the first time you had a job at ArtsKC, correct?
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, I worked there from 2014 to 2016 as the development manager. So it was primarily fundraising based, and I was fortunate to be able to do some program development and event management as well. It was a great experience because I really got to stretch my skill set and build a foundation for a lot of the things I do today. And this is my second go around at ArtsKC. I started there October of 2020 in my current role.
Nice. Very cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. What else? Let's talk about, since you were talking about so much community service and public work, let's talk about you had a job with Rightfully Sewn, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about that. How was that? What was that?
Absolutely. So it turns out you can be involved in fashion in Kansas City. That would be the headline for that part of my life. So Rightfully Sewn is a social enterprise, and they train women as seamstresses and place them in living wage jobs, as well as incubate fashion designers. And then they have a constellation of other supportive services like small batch production, education for fashion designers, public sewing classes, and then other fashion related, I'd say, thought leader events. But it was cool because that was the first time beyond my experience when I did CORO Kansas City and was placed at an organization called Planet Reuse. That was, so I guess technically, the second time I'd experienced a true social enterprise. Planet Reuse, their model was to go to deconstruction sites for buildings and salvage materials, polish them up, and then reuse them in new design products. And the founder of that organization, I believe that organization was absorbed by Burns and McDonnell, and they now do similar work, but fact check me on that. And then for Rightfully Sewn, the model is, of course, primarily focused on that social aspect of training women, now individuals in general with barriers to employment, to skill up. But then having those earned revenue activities to kind of feed into and support that charitable work. So it's cool because you're able to, from a fundraising and revenue perspective, bring in all types of income. And it's great from a management perspective because it does lend itself to more stability due to that diversified portfolio. But I loved it because I was there from the minute it was an idea all the way up until our 5th anniversary in September of 2020. So it was just phenomenal to see it go from no staff, we were all volunteers, to Jennifer Lapka, the founder, going full-time. And then I joined as the second full-time staff member in April of 2018. And I mean, it's just grown phenomenally well. And I'm so proud of my time there and being able to help create that organization.
Yeah, that's really cool. And the fact that they make such a difference in the community through sewing and fashion. And I'm really glad that that's part of the Kansas City culture, that's an option here.
Yeah, and through that, I really learned that we have a pretty robust history with the fashion industry. Kansas City was actually home to the world's largest dress manufacturer, the Nellie Don Dress Co., in the mid-50s. And she built the largest factory just north of the river. And I mean, it was so large that she sold 75 million dresses around the world over the life of her factory, which started in the late 1800s, I think like 1890, 98, all the way up through, I want to say, the 60s or 70s. Yeah, I mean, to put that in context, that's close to what H&M does currently. And she did that when women weren't even supposed to own land or be unmarried. Right. So it's just phenomenal.
Wow, that's amazing. Amazing little tidbit of history. Very cool.
Yeah. I'm full of useless knowledge. What's that useless? It's like cocktail knowledge. That's what I'll call it.
Yeah, definitely not useless. I love it. Let's see. What else do I want to ask you? Let's talk a little bit more about your keep going with involvement in the community. Can you talk about other organizations you're part of, boards you sit on, that kind of thing, and what you do for those organizations?
Yeah, I would say for anyone who is younger and looking to skill up, volunteering and serving on boards is a great way to do that. Especially young friends boards, because then you get to expand your network and make new friends, as well as expand your skill set. So I served on the ArtsKC board, which is the Young Friends board for the Kansas City Ballet. I served on the Mid-America Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce board, which was phenomenal, and I led their ambassadors program there. I worked with Dan Nelson, who was one of the founders, to really formalize that program and then grow it. And I'm very happy with the success. A number of current board members have come up through the ranks of that ambassadors program, which was always my dream. And we've also had ambassadors who were emboldened to start new programming for the chamber, which again was always my dream. I thought of it as a really meaningful way for people to engage with and serve the chamber while also serving the community and making sure that we're uplifting businesses that do choose to actively create inclusive spaces, not only for people who are LGBTQ, but also people of color, women, people with different abilities. That's really important to me. So those two experiences were really great. And with ArtsKC, that one was more, again, formalizing. Like I said, I've always helped build things. And I love that process, the ideation and thinking big and bold about what you can accomplish, and then working backwards to make your chosen objectives real is so much fun. Building it as you fly it is so much fun. I'm an adrenaline junkie. Yeah, so that's always enjoyable. And then I would say, what else have I done? I've served on a number of event committees, again, just to network and see how other fundraisers, hone their craft, how they choose to operate events has been great. So the Kemper Gala, I've served on that a couple times. That's one of my favorites because I love contemporary and modern art. And obviously the Kemper is a great space for that in our community, one of many. But I lived up the street, so it was super easy to get to those meetings as well. It was literally like a 3-minute walk. So that was perfect. I've been to and involved with the Nelson's Young Friends of Art group, not as a board member, but more so as a volunteer and an attendee to events, and a sounding board on occasion. And then currently I serve on the board for BlaqOut, which is a grassroots initiative to serve people with HIV/AIDS in our Black queer community, and also to lead a pioneering intervention to really reduce the transmission of HIV/AIDS in our community, and ultimately get us to a place where it's no longer a scourge or threat to in particular, people of color. We are seeing pretty high infection rates, specifically with Black men who have sex with men. So this is a way for us to really meet that community where they are and ensure that they have access to what they need to remain healthy and safe.
Right. Yeah. That's amazing.
Thank you. It's fun. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, you were involved in a lot of really great things. So I was just looking at our comments on Facebook.
Oh wow, people are here?
Yeah, we've got some people watching. So thanks, everyone.
That's so cool. Yeah. Hi everyone.
So we have Pat Jacobs McDonald says Godfrey Riddle brings tremendous energy, creativity, and clear-sightedness to everything he touches. Which I think is perfect.
Thank you, Pat.
And then one of our volunteers at the Arts Council, Vandra Solomon, says, love your Zoom setting. Do you do interior design also?
Maybe one day. So part of my vision for my company, Civic Saint, which we can touch on a little bit more, I want to create apparel, artwork, and home goods. So right now I'm in the apparel and accessories space. I've got a few shirts that feature this human design. Please check them out. And then I've also got lapel pins that are really quite beautiful. And I'm working on introducing a new line in the next probably 6 weeks of celluloid acetate and M4 95 is what the company calls it, but pins. But basically, long story short, they're made from plant-based materials, so they are environmentally friendly, but extremely beautiful. It's actually the same material that Warby Parker makes its glasses out of, and it's a manufacturer that's been around since 1849 and a family-owned company in Italy. So I'm very excited to work with them to bring some products to the market. But all that to say, maybe one day, I personally love interior design. If I could do it all over again, I would either become an action movie star, because I just love Mission Impossible and Jack Ryan and Bourne Identity, so good, or I would become an interior designer. So it would be so cool to have Civic Saint grow to a space where people want to bring that lifestyle into their homes and to be able to help them create spaces that are inspiring for them. That's really been my guiding light in designing. I try not to lean into trends. I focus more so on what will make me happy when I'm home, what will comfort me when I'm feeling low, what will bring me inspiration and creativity. And this pattern did that. And other parts of my home do that. I can share photos later that we can post, but yeah, a long-winded answer yet again.
Love it. And you did that stencil yourself, which is amazing.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
And frustrating, I'm sure, but beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you. I did do this stencil myself. So this is what I playfully call Civic Saint World Headquarters in my studio office space above my garage. So this is where I work. I'm currently working from home for ArtsKC and also for Civic Saint because we don't have office space yet. We're only 3.5 months old. But yeah, so I've got my desk over here with a 3D printer, computer for designing, and then my work computer. But I decided to stencil this space because I wanted it to be a home for creativity. And because I am trying to create artwork in here, having the ability to just be surrounded by something that's both beautiful and inspiring was really important. But it took 4 days because I had to paint over the original color. Then I had to paint the base white. And then I had to get a foam brush that's only like 4 inches long and slowly build up the paint in the stencil. Otherwise it'll bleed. So yeah.
Rewarding.
I don't. Oh, it is. It really is. I don't recommend it for a whole room, but definitely for like an accent wall or like the back of a bookshelf or a pantry. Go for it.
For sure.
That would only take 2 days.
Yeah, more recommended. Let's see. Oh, we have another comment. Let's see. Jefferson Blair. Jeffrey Blair, I think.
Oh, Jefferson, yeah.
He says Godfrey is a kind and infectious has a kind and infectious passion for all he does. Casey is lucky to have him as part of our cultural, societal, and nonprofit community. Inspiring. Plus, he has great wallpaper in his home. And then he says, I mean stencil.
Thank you, Jefferson.
With Civic Saint, do you have employees that do work with you as well, or is it just you?
So right now, it's just me, and I'm the founder and president of the organization, but I have chosen very intentionally to work with individuals from marginalized backgrounds to bring my products to market. So She Prints It is a Black female-owned organization that helps with my apparel production and fulfillment of apparel orders. I've also worked with Fawn Lies, who is a transgender creative of color who did all of the photography that you see on the website, except for the product photos. I took those. I don't want to throw that on them in case in case you don't like them. But all of the beautiful ones, those were fun. So they're phenomenal and so creative in their own right. They do graphic design, photography as their hobby, as well as work full time as a graphic designer at Focal Lines International. But I really enjoy them. And then I've also worked with other artists of color to collaborate on other ideas that I'd like to bring to market. But it's really important to me that even as a small business, I may not have a lot of buying power right now. And I may not have a lot of sway right now, but that doesn't mean that I can't do my very best to work with people who are traditionally cut out of the marketplace. And my dream would be that as I grow, that will be a core feature, that I'll be able to take these companies along with me and see their businesses grow. It's just really important to me. I was given an opportunity. People have taken bets on me, and I feel like it's only fair to not pull up the ladder after me, so to speak.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So you said Civic Saint is 3.5 months old, right?
Yes, October 1st is when we launched. So yeah, 3.5 months old. Almost
so
4.
Was it I know you said that you have been doing this kind of thing for a long time, but with Civic Saint specifically, did it stem from the Black Lives Matter movement?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So yes, and this again will be a little longer of a story, but I will condense it. Yeah, so I've always wanted to own a business, and I've always wanted it to be meaningful. When I was in middle school, my family lost our home to foreclosure, and we were homeless for a short time. Fortunately, we were able to stay with friends and family and in hotel spaces. So we were more so what you would term the invisible homeless, because we weren't out on the streets like some individuals have no choice to be. Right. But ultimately, that really opened my eyes, because as a child, I couldn't understand, and I was 12 or 13, I couldn't understand how you could live in a world where people didn't have what they needed to survive. And it boiled down to me thinking, well, that's a business decision. It's a community decision. Why can't we live in a world where people are given the opportunity to live to their fullest potential? And I really wanted to set out on a mission to start an organization that played ethically, that showed the world that you can grow and you can be successful, but you don't have to have a zero-sum approach or winner-take-all approach. And in fact, when you have that approach, you just automatically limit yourself, because then you're not in a flourishing community, you're not in a flourishing market, because you're sucking up as many resources as you can instead of taking what you need and sharing the wealth. Mm-hmm. So all that to say that, long story short, fast forward until I'd say June of 2018, I received a cancer diagnosis for adenoid cystic carcinoma in my jaw. And I had a small tumor that was removed, and I'm still finishing up treatment. But throughout that process, my father unfortunately passed away suddenly, only a month later. And then a little over a year later, in September of 2020, my mom passed away. And that was right before my cancer journey really entered its most difficult portion, which was when I had only about a month and a half after my mother's funeral, I had a major surgery where they opened me from the back of my ear up to my chin and removed my jaw from about here up to here, and then pulled bone and tissue from my right leg to rebuild my jaw. And then hold it all together with a titanium strap. So I'm part robot, which is kind of cool. I love robots. But through that experience, it really, through all of that loss, all of that uncertainty, And then after treatment, I had to do chemo and radiation therapy for 6 weeks, which was grueling. I've never been so exhausted in my entire life. I remember after my first treatment, I think I literally slept like 18 hours that day. I only woke up a couple times to go to the restroom. I didn't even eat anything. But yeah, so all that to say, it really just brings home for you what's important and really affirmed my desire to start something and start something meaningful. So I started toying around with business ideas as I was in chemo treatment, thinking about what type of company I want to start, what do I want to do, what change do I want to see. And I always knew it would have some sort of social entrepreneurial aspect. But then it all came to a head when George Floyd was murdered. I couldn't even bear to watch the video because it's so painful. And seeing the outcry, not only in his community, but around the world, it just pushed me to a point where I couldn't take it anymore. As a gay Black man, I am done waiting for equity. I am done waiting to have the right to have space in the world. I shouldn't even have to wait, because being a human, having life, you have space. It's automatic. So I decided that I would launch with a protest collection that really paid homage to the Black Lives Matter, equal rights and voter rights movements, and harness a portion of each product sold to benefit organizations that are advancing social and racial justice in America. So we donate to the Equal Justice Initiative, which is headed by Brian Stevenson, who's one of my personal heroes. I dream of meeting him one day just to say thank you for being you. He's amazing. We also support the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, the Bail Project, because it's, as my friend so eloquently stated, it's terrible to be trapped up in a system that you're trying to change. And the Bail Project protects people from that. And then locally, we support Truce Market Collective, which is really uplifting creatives and entrepreneurs of color in the Truce corridor. I hope to expand that as I grow, but I'm really trying to under-promise, over-deliver, and not take on too much at this early stage. So I really want to focus in on those 4 organizations because they mean a lot to me personally, because I'm a donor to each individually, but they also are working at a systemic level and a boots on the ground level to really create change and protect those who are making change.
Great.
So that's the answer.
Wow. You're so inspiring.
And oh, thank you. And if you can hear, my neighbor's dog is heckling me.
That's okay.
Oh, they're cute.
My cats haven't walked in front of me yet, so.
Oh, I love cats.
They're fun. Wow. Okay. So, I feel like we have to talk about the pandemic in here. Has that, I mean, obviously it's affected you, but as an entrepreneur who has just started a business and is doing so much in the community, how has the pandemic affected you?
Yeah, it's been hard. And I think for so many of us out there, that is straight up the first answer. I am a sociable person, so as an individual, it's been hard not to be able to see my friends as much as I'd like to, especially now because of winter. We can't hang out safely really anymore without freezing.
Yeah.
And even then, it's like I only saw a cache of 5 friends. So that way, if someone were to get sick, I'm not spreading the virus far, and even taking that risk isn't the best, and that's something I do admit readily. But yeah, so that's been hard. And then I think starting a business, fortunately, it's pushed me to found a business that can exist regardless of the pandemic to some extent, and that does exist because of the pandemic in some extent. So I think that allows me a certain sense of resiliency because I already start with a mindset of I have to figure out how to do this in a climate that isn't necessarily making it easy to start a business. It's never easy. But yeah, so I'd say it's definitely that perspective about the value of resiliency. But that's really been the only impact for that. And then, yeah, I don't know, that was a bit of a murky answer, but the short answer is yes, it's been hard. It has impacted me. Yep. I'm learning from it, and it will hopefully set me up to be a stronger business, not stronger, a more adaptive and resilient business long-term, and a more adaptive and resilient leader long-term.
Yeah, it's amazing goals to take out of this, such a bleak time.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And it's been hard because I also had a career change in between cancer treatment and today. So for a while, like October was one heck of a month. I was in an entrepreneurship program. I was exiting my old job. I had just started Civic Saint, and I was slowly starting to work for my new job. And it was just like, wow, there's a lot going on. Yeah. I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I made it.
Here you are.
Yeah, it was, and also I was still going through like health problems as well with, you know, residual cancer things. So never again, hopefully, but yeah, it's been hard.
Yeah, and you've been working from home since the shutdown, right? Since quarantine.
March 17th, yeah.
Yep, that's crazy because I started my job March 16th with the Arts Council. So,
congrats!
Thanks. But yeah, it's been interesting.
Yeah, are you all working from home as well?
We are not. We're in the office. I'm just home today because of the snow, and it's easier for me to do creative conversations in a quiet place. So I'm in my house, but typically we're in the office. We have kind of our like own office that's closed door away from other offices. It's just Sarah and I in there, so we feel pretty safe in there. And the building's doing a great job of social distancing and cleaning and all that stuff. So.
Good. That's so important. Yeah. With Rightfully Sewn, we immediately went remote. I went remote on the 17th because at that time I just finished chemo treatment, so I was high risk. And yeah, and then transitioning to ArtsKC, we've been remote, and you can go into the office. It's just most people only go in if they, you know, for perfunctory tasks to check the mail and write checks. Yeah, and then for me, it's to print things because I'm a millennial and my printer is from 2009 and it doesn't connect. So yeah, I've gone in maybe like 6 or 7 times since I started in October.
Wow. What has ArtsKC been doing since the pandemic and since you've been working there, which wasn't that long ago, but you worked there before.
Yeah.
As well. So yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, and then I'll tell you what we've been up to now, and then we can talk about what I did when I was there the first time. But they've been busy. It's been really affirming in that the mission was headed in the right direction. ArtsKC really serves as the advocate, the promoter, and supporter of the arts in our 5-county region. However, in recent months and years, we have expanded a little bit to Douglas County with Lawrence and Leavenworth. So I would say, as a service organization, it's been our time to shine in that we've been able to step up and serve the arts community with information that they needed when they needed it. We've tried our best to allocate funds through our grant making process to organizations in need, to at least provide them a little bit of sustenance to persevere for some period of time. And we're just really doing our best to listen and serve. So that's in a nutshell what we've been doing. There's a variety of convenings and informational sessions and advocacy with legislators and grant making panels and emergency grants. There have been a lot of activities, and wow, I'm thankful that we have ArtsKC to help support our arts community, but there's still so much more support that we need. And within the next few months, we hope to establish a platform for our community to step up and support the arts.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then on my first go around to ArtsKC, I think one of the things I'm most proud of that I always bring up is our arts leadership series. It's no longer in practice, but at the time we had a board and committee matchmaking program that connected people who want to serve with arts nonprofits looking for board members, committee members, and high-level volunteers. And I was talking to Edgar Palacios, who was at Central Exchange at the time, who was our partner for that program, and Cece Rojas and Harlan Brownlee. It was their brainchild, and then Edgar and I got to implement it on the ground. But yeah, so we were like, you know, how can we make this better? What are we hearing? What are the challenges? And Edgar was like, yeah, you know, people just don't understand what it means to be on a board, like especially people who may not have others in their network who have served on boards or volunteered for nonprofits. And I was like, that's a dope point of view. We should do something about that. So I thought about it and developed a 4-part panel discussion series where we brought in leaders from our community to talk about the different aspects of board leadership, board governance, nonprofits, what it means to be on a board and how you can be a good board member. And then because the program was specifically targeted to engage people from marginalized backgrounds, I also talked about tokenism on boards, because having served on a board or two at that point, I had experienced it myself. And the perception that you're only in the room because you fill whatever quota. And it's like, you know, that may have gotten me into the room in some instances. Most instances it didn't. I'm here because of my skill. But even if you are in the room because you're filling a quota, you're not going to hold on to that board seat if you aren't able to contribute meaningfully.
Right.
And yeah, so that program taught people what they needed to learn, and most importantly, helped them build networks that could be resources to them as they stepped into board leadership. And it was cool because I did get to see people who came to those sessions ultimately matriculate onto nonprofit boards. So it worked. Yeah, so that was
measurable data.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God. So I stay in touch with a few of the people who came through that program, and it's just so cool to see how they've matured as leaders in their own rights and helped our community.
Yeah, that's awesome. I hope you guys get to do something like that soon again. So I think that's very important.
I agree, and that's one thing that we do hope to tackle at ArtsKC is figuring out a way to do a revamped version of that, something that can have a broader impact and is perhaps more focused in its education and more sustained in its education. But that's something we're toying with right now. And if anyone has ideas or wants to sponsor that, please contact me at ArtsKC.
Let's see. So we've still got a few people watching. So I just want to say, if anyone has any questions for Godfrey, type in the chat and we'll try to answer them. But Godfrey, with all of the things that you have a hand in right now, what can the community do to support you and support your business and support ArtsKC? Kind of just tell us what we can do.
Oh, thank you for asking. I would say to support Civic Saint, if you could go like us on social media, we're at Civic Saint on Instagram and Facebook, and then share one of our posts with your network or email a friend to tell them about Civic Saint. And of course, buy a product. I think as a young entrepreneur, establishing a market base is really important. So if you find something that's meaningful to you or would be meaningful with someone you care about, I would honestly be honored to have you purchase an item. It's amazing to me that people see value in what we're creating, and yeah, so that would be wonderful. And then for ArtsKC, any amount of support you're able to give as a donor, any amount of time you're able to lend as a volunteer, that's always needed, especially as we look to the spring and work to build out a platform to bring more support to the arts for recovery and resilience from COVID-19. There are going to be distinct opportunities for you to support beyond just monetary. So please go to ArtsKC and subscribe to our newsletter, like us on social media so that you'll be the first to hear about those opportunities once I can talk in more than like, you know, cloaked metaphors. Just know it'll be big.
Awesome. Is there anything else you want to talk about that I haven't touched on or that we didn't talk in depth enough about? Anything that you can think of?
I don't know. Oh, well, I guess one question that I always get, and if there are any questions too, please do let me know. But one question I always get, well, two questions I always get. First, how do you know what you want to do in life? And then secondly, how do you balance your time? The answer to the first question is no one knows what they want to do in life.
Yeah.
I would say, I say there's always been a core purpose in me to better the community, and my passion is public service. I have a passion for the arts, and I did pursue that pretty heavily up until really life started to take a really strong dive for the worst, so to speak, in 2018 with my father passing. And then I also lost a number of other relatives, my grandma, one of my closest aunts, all within a matter of months. And of course, my mother, and then cancer. That was just like a reality check, because up until that point, I had been focused on building a career in the nonprofit sector so I could position myself to better my community. But it really showed me that you don't necessarily need to know what you want to do with your life. It's really what will interest you for the next year to 3 years. What do you feel you can uniquely contribute? And being okay with exercising that and trying to listen to your heart. A book that I found useful in understanding what that passion might be for the next year to 20 years is called Work on Purpose. And it's published by Echoing Green, and they essentially fund social entrepreneurs. They were actually one of the initial funders for Teach for America back when it was just an idea. And they basically take you through the stories of some of their key entrepreneurs and use those as tools to help you analyze your story and understand what brings you meaning. And there's actually a worksheet with each story where they ask you a specific question like, what makes you really mad or brings you a lot of pain? And that can help you begin to identify your values. And then based on your values, you know, what do you really enjoy doing? So it brings me deep pain to live in a world where everyone isn't acknowledged as human and as equal. And what brings me joy is fundraising and designing. So I'm doing both of those things between ArtsKC and Civic Saint.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, and then as far as managing my time, I'm terrible at that. But I'm getting better slowly but surely. Check back at 8:60 and then I'll maybe be on time to meetings. Yeah, but I found use in time blocking. That's been a way for me to like put time on my calendar to say I'm going to work on this grant request or I'm going to do XYZ thing. And then I took a time management class recently where a gentleman talked about an app called Todoist, which is basically a highfalutin like to-do list app, and I love that. But yeah, and then just making sure that at the end of the day, when work is done, work is done. I don't respond to emails, I don't take calls, because that time off to recharge is important. The sign of the difference between a professional and a novice is that a professional knows when to take a break.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So, any questions, or do you have any questions, or?
There's no questions in the chat, and I don't think I have any more questions. But thank you so much for taking time out of your day to meet with me. It was nice to see you face to face and not just email.
I know. And we do have to do a quick shout out to Tucker and Scout because I have on one of their rings and I believe you're wearing a pair of her earrings.
Yes, got them for Christmas.
Fabulous. Yes, it's always, you know, support local if you can. Of course, buy Black if you can. But it's just so important that we support entrepreneurs because I mean, Kate Spade is from Overland Park and the late Kate Spade, and you never know where these individuals could go. And even if they never make it to Kate Spade status, that's not the point. It's about doing something that brings you meaning and that can hopefully bring others joy.
Yeah, awesome. Great ending. I love that.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you for having me. It was so good to meet you.
Thank you. You too. Have a good rest of your day.
You too.